Jazzcast Pros.
Have you ever felt like life's twists and turns were too much to overcome? In today's episode, we're sharing the incredible journey of Dani, who transformed a traumatic childhood into a life of creativity, service, and purpose. You'll learn how embracing faith can ignite your calling and how using your gifts can create lasting impact in your community and beyond. Hello, Fearless Warriors. Welcome to Fearless Fridays with Maryann, the podcast where real talk meets real transformation. I am your host, Dr. Maryann Rivera Dannert, and with over 10 years as a life coach, author, speaker, and trainer, I will be guiding you on this journey of healing, growth, and empowerment. Each week, we dive into raw, authentic conversations about life's challenges, victories, and everything in between. Together, we'll hear your inner child, build unshakable confidence, and unlock the fearless you that's been waiting to shine. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's take the next step towards the life that you deserve. This is your safe space, your community, and your call to be limitless, because it's time to be free, fearless, and fabulous.
Hi, I am author Dani. I am a chef. I am a deacon, ordained. I can marry you and bury you. I just can't do the committal to the ground. But while we're still here on this side, let me cook for you and let me help you to heal the things that you probably didn't have anything to do with getting broken. So that's about it.
I love that. I can marry you, I can bury you. I love that. I love that. So your trademark is your trauma is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. Talk to us a little bit about that. What exactly does that mean? Where did that come from?
Okay. Well, let's just say this. There was a very, very important gentleman to this side of the century called Sigmund Freud. And the Freudian theory comes from the fact that everything that you go through or you learn in life, you learn in the first through the sixth year of your existence. So let's just say those first 6 years of your existence taught you wonderful things about grammar and diction, about being polite, about sharing, about being considerate. But it also taught you this thing called generational curses. It taught you this stuff called being afraid. It taught you these things called tumultuous living in a dysfunctional household that was very traumatic in a whole lot of different ways. That's usually going to follow you for the rest of your life. And it's going to rear its ugly head in places and in things that, wow, there's some stuff going on there. And people on the outside of you, they have this thing called, they won't tell you, but they'll talk about you.
Right. Yep.
So it's basically what it is. It's kind of cut and dry. Your trauma most times wasn't your fault. It's usually something that someone did to you. It's something that happened to you. It's something that was imposed upon you. But you can't go around bleeding out on people who didn't cut you. So you're healing. That's on you, boo. So, yeah. I thought about it one day, and I actually had a knockdown, drag-out argument with somebody on social media about it who seemed to believe that, by saying people that they're healing to people that their healing was their responsibility, was telling them the actual opposite, which was it's their fault that they're in need of fixing. And I'm like, no, that's not what I said. I said totally the opposite for that. And I was like, you know what? Block, poop. I don't have to agree with you, but we can agree to be disagreeable with the same token of being respectful to each other. So at that point, there was no need for that person in my life. You can't tell me what I feel, what I know, and what I deem to be true. I'm a ex-mental health and social, I'm an ex-mental health counselor and substance abuse counselor. So you're telling me from years of stuff that I know that I've treated clients and patients about. So, so that's where it came from.
Yeah. So, staying on that topic for a second, and as someone myself that has experienced some things, and once upon a time before I became the healed version of myself, I would blame other people, relationships, I'm this way because of, what so-and-so said, what they did and things like that. But you, as having the expertise as a previous mental health therapist, and also you are in ordained, you said
Deacon.
deacon. So how do you shift to start taking responsibility? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And why is it sometimes easier to blame other people versus looking at the mirror?
Good question. I like that. And you're not the only one that asked me that. Let me just make that clear. As a child, if somebody's beating you all the time, and this is where we came with, spare the rod. That's still out on the fence for me. And I believe that every now and then a timeout ain't gonna work. I need to tap your booty. Okay. I don't mean brutally beat you and leave whelps on you and, take the belt and choke you. I'm not saying all of that, and hopefully anybody that hears this won't even misconstrue this. If somebody is consistently being slapped, I mean, knock the crap out of you, what are you going to grow up and do? You're going to do one of two things. You're going to fear anytime somebody raises their hand, even if it's just to reach to get something, or you're going to think that it's okay to beat people, to slap and to beat up people. And every time you don't get your way, let me punch somebody in the mouth. That's not what I'm saying. And okay, granted, that trauma happened. Okay. But it happened way back then. The first step towards not pulling out the blame throwers, poof, 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 is to healing. See, I went through years of therapy. Okay. I went through years of healing and starting a process. But before I did that, I went through years of drug addiction. So in my mind, it was everybody's fault that I was an addict. It was everybody's fault that, this happened in my life and I wouldn't have done this if you hadn't have done that. But unfortunately, that only works but for so long.
Right.
Once you become an adult and life starts lifing, and you see other people going on with their life and being happy, and I mean genuinely happy, having joy, getting blessed with things that in your mind is elevating them, and you're stuck on stupid in this mean, life sucks situation, whose fault is it then? Now, mind you, by that time, I'm pretty sure you've had relationships fail. You've had people tell you, yo, you need to go talk to somebody about that. You've had people say, wow, I only said good morning to you. Why are you biting my head off? Okay. And people will, if you don't check yourself, is an old saying, if you don't check yourself, you wreck yourself, right? And you'll find yourself by yourself. And at that point, I'm pretty sure that people that go around, because you said you experienced some things that made you had to change, right? When you find yourself by yourself in a corner and everybody else wants to play, but you don't play nicely with others, it's because of the blame thrower. It's because everything was everybody's fault but your own. But when you grow up and you learn that, wait a minute, hold up, let me start looking at things. You got to take this tape out and put that tape in. And when you learn that certain things you have to take responsibility for. What part did you play in certain things? Okay, granted, maybe your uncle molested you. Maybe your mom beat the crap out of you. Maybe your dad was an alcoholic and very verbally abusive. But at a certain point, you make a decision that you either want to stay stuck in that or you want to live before you die. So that's where the healing, that's where the forgiveness parts come in. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So how do you start the healing process for the person that might be listening and, excuse me, that might be right now, going through playing those old tapes, like you talked about, and replaying the abuse, the domestic violence, the addictions, and all these different type of traumas. What's the first step that this individual, that they should take? And what does that healing look like?
Forgiveness. You cannot, first of all, you have to speak it. You can't keep playing them only in your head. That's number one. Because nobody can hear it. Nobody can speak to it. Nobody can work through it with you if you're the only one that knows this happened. And that person who's done the perpetrator is dead and gone and sleeping in their grave, and you still running these tapes back in your head, right? So what happens to you? You're sitting there with all of these emotions just bottled up. And it's just like okay, give you a scenario, right? You holding resentments. It's just like a refrigerator, right? Okay. You got this jar of mayonnaise that's in the back of the refrigerator, and it's been expired for about a year. It's green, yellow, blue. It's got all kinds of fur all over it, right? And it's sitting in the back of the refrigerator,
experiment.
right? Right, that part, right? But you every now and then you'll toss maybe the things that you brought in for leftovers yesterday and tomorrow. But that back there in the back, that jar of mayonnaise is still sitting in there festering, right? But you said you cleaned out the refrigerator. But you always seem to forget that jar of mayonnaise. That's that negative thought for that thing that happened to you when you were 8 years old that's still playing here, and you haven't let go of. Until you get rid of it, it festers. And then the next thing you know, you go to the doctor and you have diabetes, or you're morbidly obese, or you're wondering why you're acting out, or alcohol, or you have a heart attack, or you have a stroke, or you have these things. And what people don't realize is stuff that we don't take the lid off of and let out and take the garbage out, it builds and it builds and it builds. And eventually the garbage spills over into what? Your life. You have to forgive. And forgiveness isn't for the perpetrator. And I think we make the mistake of thinking, oh, I'm going to forgive him, but I ain't never going to forget it. Why? It's over. It's done. You survived it. Did you think it's a reason why God let you survive it? Because there's somebody else that went through the same thing, and you need to help them to heal instead of help them to stay angry and bitter. So forgiveness is the first step. And then you can start to heal it. You can't, don't keep opening the wound. The wound is closed for a reason. Let the scab fall off, and now you got a scar. Now the scars might not ever go away. And I'll be the first to tell you that. But it just means that you survived it. It means that you got through it. It means that you grew up a little bit. It means that you live to conquer another day. That's the first step.
So you mentioned that, you struggled with, drugs and alcohol before? Yeah. What was the turning point, without going too deep, about it? Mm-hmm. What was the turning point for you? What was it that occurred that you were like, okay, enough is enough. I need to get help.
I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. What people don't realize about addiction, unless they've had an addiction to something or another, you might not have been addicted to drugs. You might not have been addicted to alcohol, but you might be addicted to gambling. You might be addicted to food. You might be a sex and love addict, right? The one thing about addiction, it's a disease just like anything else. And the only thing you can do with a disease is get treatment, right? So until you get treatment for something, you can't heal from it, right? So one day I looked at myself and I didn't see myself. I didn't know who I was looking at. I was tired. I had become someone that I vowed to never be. And I woke up and I said, you know what? I'm tired. Because addiction is a daily job, just like anything else that you're chasing. It becomes harder and harder to get one more. Waking up next to people that I don't even know who I slept with, waking up in places that I don't know how I got there. And a lot of it, I can say a lot of it came from the trauma that I suffered as a child. However, at a certain point, you can make a choice that you want to stay in this pain or you want to let it go. And it became a little easier for me the longer I stayed clean to deal with the stuff that caused me to go out and become a drug addict, But it's a disease. It's only arrested a day at a time, and any time that I forget that it's a day at a time, I can pick it right back up. So I thank God.
How many days do you have now?
Well, I had 35 years off of crack. I had a slip at 20 years clean, and I acted out on alcohol. So I have 10 years off of alcohol. So, yeah.
Praise God.
God is good.
Love that. So you also mentioned that you're a chef.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what came first? Being a chef, being a mental health therapist?
Being mental health. Mental health and substance abuse came first. When I relapsed, I realized that it was just way too much and I was carrying too many people and I didn't want to do that anymore. Most good little drug addicts, that's the first thing they want to do. They want to help everybody. They want to carry their 12-step book around and I am doing this and you should do it too and you should do it too and you get a car and you get a car. then you end up, I think the power kind of gets to people at first. Oh, I can't possibly have these issues because I'm helping the world. And, but every good counselor needs a counselor. Every good therapist needs a therapist. And that was the part that I forgot. And I forgot about me because my caseload had become so big. And then I was working, burning both ends against the middle. At that time, I was an independent recording artist. So I was recording, I was running and performing on the weekends. And then I was doing 82 hours a week during the week, leaving one job, going to the prison to my other job. And, one day I just had a nervous breakdown. And then about 30 days later, I had to get a total knee replacement. And they put me on pain relaxers, nerve relaxers, muscle relaxers, pain relievers, and sent me home by myself. And I couldn't make meetings. And there was no Zoom meetings at the time. So the very next thing was, you know what? I want to be just like everybody else who could have a glass of white wine with dinner. So this was the lie that I told them. I hated alcohol. I didn't abuse alcohol when I was using drugs. I relapsed on alcohol. So, I told myself that I wanted to be like everybody else and put the pinky up and have a glass of white wine with dinner. No, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough.
Right. So how did you shift into becoming a chef?
Always loved to cook. I just never stayed in the house long enough to help my mom in the kitchen. But I always loved to cook. I always watched when I might have been high and watching, but I was watching. When I got clean, my mom passed away when I got clean. I ended up having to raise 3 siblings that were kids. 12, 9, and 4. They were kids.
Oh, wow.
And so I became the cook of the house. And well, can you cook the way mommy used to cook? And nobody thought I could cook because I never did. But I loved to cook. I loved, Julia Childs, and I loved the Food Network and stuff. And I used to watch all of that stuff in my early recovery when TV first started coming to cable networks and so on and so forth. And I started a small business. And, when I changed my eating patterns, I started a small business and it started going really well. Sandy Apples, Healthy Meal Options. And after watching my mom and my grandmother and all of them die of diseases attached to morbid obesity, I figured it out. And I'm like, let's take some of this out and add some of that. And let's do a little bit more of that and add less of this. And I started doing it for myself. And somebody said, what, this is good. You really need to start, cooking. So I started a business and then I went to culinary school and here I am.
Love that. One of the other hats that you wear, you are also an author.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So tell us about your book and what prompted you to write that book?
Well, let me just say this. It took me 18 years to birth my memoir. And it took me 18 years because life kept lifing. I wrote the first 10 pages of my book back in 2005. And everything, was going different places. It was either, I was changing professions. I was, like I said, at the time, I was still performing, I was still working at the time. And I was working 82 hours a week in 2 different jobs, performing on the weekends. And I just, okay, I'll get to it. Then I started the business. Then I changed relationships. Then I did this. Then I did, okay, I'll get back to it. And never found time to get back to it. Then I relapsed and it was like, okay, I'll get back to it. And a couple of years ago, 2022, I relocated to open up, a brand new store for the company I work for. And 90 days later, my back imploded in 3 levels. And those 3 levels took out almost my whole lumbar. And so for 6 months, I was down after relocating. It was scary as heck. Like, I don't know if you've ever moved from state to state, but moving from state to state is a big deal. It takes a lot of money. And, and again, I'm going into a brand new job, same company, but brand new job. And, it was really, really scary. So, after 90 days, I almost lost my mind. And I'm like, okay, God, I don't know what you're trying to tell me here, but, something got to give. So it was one or two boxes that I hadn't unpacked. I said, well, let me put some of this stuff away. And lo and behold, my manuscript fell out of the box that had absolutely nothing to do with writing. I don't even know how it got mixed up in there. And I had just prayed, God, please show me a sign as to what I'm supposed to be doing, because I can't do this. I look up at God and I say, all right, I get it. I got it. Because when I was moving, I found it and then threw it back somewhere else and lost it. And then when I could not do nothing, I had to literally be taught how to walk all over again. I'm fused from my lumbar spine down to my L1 to S1. So that's your whole bottom of your back. I have 12 screws and 4 pins in my spine. So I literally had physical therapy in my house. They had to come and teach me how to walk again. So I had nothing but time, and there was no more excuses. And I said, all right, I got it. So I knew nothing about how to start the process or anything, but I stepped out on faith and said, God, I know you brought me here for something. So, all right, I'm going to write this book, and you're going to guide me. And God has been guiding me ever since. So
what is the name of it? And do you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Sure. The name of the book is BAM! Pretty Little Bastard Child. So we got t-shirts. We're getting ready to come out with our sweatshirts for the winter and long sleeves t-shirts. And it's actually moving into the direction of a TV series. So.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much. The story is important, and it's again about childhood trauma and the need to find faith and forgiveness. The full title is Pretty Little Bastard Child, a memoir of the darkness that turned on God's light. So I'm going to share a little bit with you. And this is from chapter 5. This freedom wasn't free. Have you ever heard the saying, too smart for your own good? Well, surely between the unwanted touching, constant pressure of private school, and the mental, emotional, and physical beatings, sexual provocations, and now the sexual confusion in my head. I was a mess. And I was only 8 years old. And this was way too much stimulation. Remember before I told you that the outside appearances in my family and the superficial things were always a big part of my family's dysfunction. Oh, and the secrets. Yeah, those secrets. What goes on in my house stays in my house, and it's my business. And you better not be telling nobody what goes on in this house. Yeah, that. Pure drama. My mama's drama.
So when the book came out, what was the feedback that you received, particularly from family?
Some of my family was proud I finally did it. And some of the family of one of the perpetrators that I'm not going to give away of the book have backed away from me, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's usually what happens. And number one, I wanted to say that, congratulations. Very proud of you for, after 18 years, finally get it done. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you still did it in spite of whatever repercussions might have happened, mm-hmm. and things like that, because that's one of the things that often keep people stuck from sharing their own personal story, is because of, fear of what people are going to think, what people are going to say, and things like that. And that occurred to me when I actually wrote my first anthology project. And I remember sharing that I was scared with the visionary author, and she said, you're speaking your truth. And if they have something else to say about it, let them write their own book.
That part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the beautiful thing was I kept it very clear and very to the point. I shared my experiences and my story.
And also in writing the book, that's also a part of healing.
Mm-hmm. It's very cathartic. Yeah. It's very cathartic. Yeah, and I'm grateful that, I was able to get it done. It's unfortunate that I lost people because of it.
As we get ready to wind down, what are you working on for 2025? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I have part 2 coming out of Pretty Little Bastard Child. Volume 2 is coming out. Actually, it's going to print within the next 2 weeks. And I'm also starting an anthology with somebody you might or might not know, Dr. Moore, Dr. S. Marie Moore. The name of the book is Echoes of Affection, Tales of Human Connection. And it's basically about how humans connect. And, who are we to say who is, right for the other person to connect with? It could be your coworker. It could be your cousin. It could be, your best friend for 30 years. It could be your spouse, human connection. And then after, of course, being shut in for 2 years, how Beyonce said, being not really back outside. What made you, know that you were missing, the human connection? What gave you, that click that you had to, that something happened during COVID or whatever the case may be? Some couples it brought closer. Some couples it pushed them further away. So it's not just about couples. It's about human connection. So I'm working on that. Those are the next 2 projects that I'm working on. And I'm also pulling together a script for my TV show that'll be coming out in 2025.
That's awesome. So you are on the Fearless Fridays podcast. How are you living a fearless life?
I don't give a damn. And I hope I can say damn.
I love that.
I just turned 60 last week. Thank God I don't look like what I've been through. And I just don't. What can you hurt me with? I've been an out lesbian for years. I'm married. My wife and what I do in my house should not affect your relationship unless you're gay.
Right.
I believe in the same God that you believe in, who says love each other. That means everybody. Even if I don't like you, God says I'm supposed to love you. And part of forgiveness and healing means accepting people for who they are and still being cordial. You don't have to like me, but disrespect will never be tolerated. It just won't. I had too much of that I couldn't control as a kid. I love people. I care about people. I come on here. I wish I could heal the world. I really wish I could. I wish something that I could say or do could make people understand that stop looking at my outsides. Stop it. You might be entertaining God and not know it. Stop looking at that bum on the street and be mean and nasty and spat upon him or kicking him. He has a story just like you, So I'm not that place where, I'm fearless. There's nothing you could do to confront. I'm not afraid of anything. The biggest fear was writing this book and losing family members. And my family ain't but minute anyway. Well, I lost them. And they'll say that ain't what's going on, but I'm not slow. Ain't nothing slow about me. I know what's going on, and that's okay. I still love you. I still respect you. And I still tell you, this is my story and my healing. And I won't let you keep me from that birthright to living joyous and free. And as long as I'm joyous and free, I'm fearless. I'm stepping out on every ounce of faith for everything moving forward for the rest of whatever until God closes these pretty browns. That's how I'm being fearless.
I love it. I love it. So where can our audience connect with you, learn more about you, and support you and grab a copy of the book?
Okay, well, you can grab the book. There's a couple. www.author, that's AUTHOR, Dani, DANID. That's author. It's spelled like Dannid. Author Dani D. That's www.authordanid.com. You can get Pretty Little Bastard Child there. You can get the anthology, Love Language of Grief, with myself and a few other authors that you know. You can also get my first book, Pretty Little Bastard Child. You get it on Amazon. You get it on Barnes & Noble Books. You get anywhere books are sold. Lulu.com. You can get Love Language of Grief. We're probably going to be using Lulu again for my next anthology. You can find me on Instagram at authordani.d3. You can find me on Facebook at Danielle N. Dubois Matthews. That's my full government. Shut your face. Anyway. And you can find me on TikTok at author Dani 64. So
I love that. And I'll make sure to capture all that in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and congratulations on everything that you have accomplished and everything that's coming.
Just want to close out by saying, please remember, your trauma is not your fault, but your healing, that's on you, boo. It's your responsibility. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please leave us a 5-star review and share with a friend or two. If you aren't already following us on social media, please connect with me on LinkedIn at Maryann Rivera Dannert or visit our website, MaryannRiveraDannert.com. I will catch you next week with a brand new episode, and remember that you are a priority and you matter.